Okay, I think we can get started. We have a decent amount of people now signed in. I do want to thank you for attending this. I think there's been a lot of questions out there of companies wanting to go looking at getting R2, B3 certified, looking at doing it. So I thought, why not put together a webinar here with Michael from Glacier Consulting that will help you kind of better understand what to prepare for, things to think of when you are preparing to go down the route of being R2, B3. So that was the whole point of putting this together, is to help, just to allow you to start thinking and preparing. Everyone knows who I am. I'm John with IQ. This is Michael from Glacier Consulting, who I asked to put this presentation together. So he's going to be speaking today to kind of help you understand things you need to start to think of when preparing. We put together 10 things to really prepare for. So at this point, I will hand it off to Michael. Again, I do ask everyone to keep yourself muted and the video off as well. And then there will be a time for Q&A where you can put your questions in chat. If we don't get to your question as well, don't worry, we can have follow-up calls after this as well. And I will be sending out the recording of this too. Michael.
Thank you, John. Thanks for everybody for joining the webinar here. My name is Michael Hutchcraft. I'm the president of Glacier Consulting. I'm very passionate about R2. Been involved in R2 for quite a while. I work mainly in R2. My company does do other certifications, but my main focus is R2, 50, 60 hours a week. Very passionate about it. So I put this together of 10 things for you to think about, prepare for as you get ready to decide to go down the road of becoming certified. By no means is this an exhaustive list, just 10 things that I like to start with clients when they're ready to go. Very quickly, again, working in R2 is my main area. Prior to becoming a consultant, I spent 7 years with a very large recycler doing R2 maintenance and certifications throughout North America. A little bit of information here on Glacier. I'm not going to spend much time on that. That'll be part of the recording, and you guys can take a look at. Full service, we do all kinds of certifications. So if you have any need, you can reach out to us. So let's get to what everybody wants to know right off the bat. What should I budget for cost-wise? What is this whole thing going to cost me? The first thing I could tell you is look into getting yourself a consultant. Unless you've got a lot of background in this, a lot of experience, a consultant fee is worth its weight in gold. There's Glacier that's out there. There's other companies. Find out from friends, find out from anyone you can talk to get yourself a recommendation. Do your homework. But a consultant fee is definitely something you have to budget for. Travel may be included in that as well. In the area of COVID, we have been able to do quite a bit of the work remotely in the virtual world. But the best work that we can ever do is when we're on site working with clients. So that's definitely something to consider. The certifying body. So the consultant builds the system. The consultant verifies the system, make sure that you're where you need to be on all the requirements. The certifying body, and you've probably heard the names, Perry Johnson, Orion, NSF, SGS, SAI Global. They're all around NSAI. Get yourself several quotes from them and compare what's going to work best for you. They come up with different fees sometimes. Some may be able to meet your timeline. There may be many auditors available. There's a lot of things for you to consider. Now, there is going to be travel for that because for the R2 portion of your audit, it has to be done on site. So when you get to your stage 2 audit, the annual SIRI license is $2,000 a year, and that is per facility. So something for you to consider. If you don't go down the Rios line, and we are going to talk about that a little more in another one of the topics in this list, I believe that's a $1,250 a year annual fee that you'll pay for that as well. Depending on where you stand software wise for testing and data sanitization and some of the other, we're going to get into these as well. They're on my list as we work down there. There may be some upgrades you'll have to do for your system. And then the last one, again, this is not exhaustive of the budget, but considering how you're going to maintain your management systems going forward, you should think about what that's going to cost you on an annual basis. Budget for time. Building a management system does take time. A lot of times I do get people that come to Michael, I really want to become certified as soon as I can. I really want the expedited program. The management system takes time. When you get in front of an auditor, you really want to have an abundance of evidence. You want to have a very robust system for them to take a look at. So you have to figure out what your timeline is that. The best practice is to have someone spearheading, whether it's a consultant or somebody on your team. Definitely have somebody in control of that. The usual timeline I give clients is 4 to 6 months. And that is, of course, depends on what's happening at the company and what the overall goal is. So that's definitely something for you to consider. Record keeping. So you're going to sit down with an auditor who's going to want to see records. They're going to need to see records of testing. They're going to want to see records of how you receive the devices, how you ship them out. So if record keeping is not something that you've maybe had on top of your list for your company, that's now got to change. Because when an audit takes place, those devices are gone. They're no longer there. So we have to prove through records how we received them, how we shipped them out, how we tested them, how maybe they went into inventory, things like that. And then it gets into training, inspections if you have forklifts, or if you have balers, or if you have other equipment, and tracking the devices in and out. That's a core requirement. 5, tracking throughput is definitely something that we have to put a lot of attention to. So record keeping, electronic is always best. There are some folks that I still work with that will do the old-fashioned hard copy records, but you have to determine what's going to work best for you and put a plan in for that. Data sanitization. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. So number one, are we receiving devices that have personally identifiable information in it that can connect it back to the previous user? If so, we have a requirement in R2 to make sure that that data is sanitized, destroyed, gone in some way. Now, if for that commodity that you're processing, cell phone, hard drive, whatever it may be, if a software exists, R2v3 is going to require us to use that software. Many softwares out there to choose from. Again, a business decision as you start to look through and get some quotes on what the different providers can do for you. If a software does not exist, there is a factory reset that's allowed. The TAC committee of Series sent out a directive back in December of 2022 on how we would do this. So it's possible if a software doesn't exist. A couple of things to keep in mind. So we've got to validate that program. After you use the software, we've got to make, for anything that goes through a software, which is called logically sanitized, that has to have recovery attempts. 5% of all logically sanitized software has to have a recovery attempt done. We have to have an independent validation of the program. Somebody who is independent of the process, somebody who has the right background, whether it's NAID related, R2v3 related. There's all kinds of trainings out there that we can use to show the right competence. So data sanitization is a huge part. Again, we could talk more on that offline if you like to at some time. Testing. Are we testing? Is that something that's going to be new to a facility out there? Maybe you're doing testing and we're just not recording that testing. So that's going to come into play. There is a document in R2V3 when you have Appendix C as part of your scope that's called the R2 reuse plan. The R2 reuse plan is how we're going to get these devices to the level back to reuse so we can sell them and make the most profit for our company. That's a very detailed document. Number one, what is the functionality of each commodity that we're going to test? It also asks what is a pass-fail threshold. So if these are new to us, maybe we've been doing the testing and just not capturing that information. Now we need to start thinking about that. Manual testing is still allowed under R2V3. However, the biggest caveat that has is you have to create then a hard copy record, or record keeping, as I said before, now becomes an issue. How are we going to record that? If you have to use software for data sanitization, I highly recommend that you use that same software or another software for testing for the ease of record keeping on that. Where does the scrap go? R2, as long as it is existed, has required that we have a downstream vendor in place, an approved downstream vendor that will handle our scrap to the end of life. So do we have a vendor in place? If not, let's start that conversation. Start thinking about that. R2V3 downstream vendors, this is Michael language here. That's a home run, because that is going to save us some time and effort in completing due diligence. If it's a non-R2V3, and so this is key to understand, if they're R2 2013, that is still non-R2V3. That brings in all the requirements of Appendix A for downstream recycling chain, which is enough to keep you busy and to get them approved. R2V3 is always the way to go. And really, when you're choosing a downstream vendor, I think it's in your best interest. Let's not just go with somebody who's going to give me the best price. Let's build a long-term relationship with that vendor. Especially when we know that they're doing it right, that they're very transparent in their processes, that we can stand in our audit and be very happy by showing that we know what they're doing with the commodities that we send them, and they're transparent to where they go, whether they go back to reuse or whether they go to end of life. In the new standard, the V3 standard, I say new standard, it's been out since July 1st, 2020, but in R2V3, there are now 10 core requirements everybody has to meet. And then there's these appendix that you see in front of you that we choose based on our business practice of the ones that we have to comply to. Appendix A, I kind of talked about that a little bit, but if you're not end of life, you're going to have a downstream recycling chain that's going to be there. If you're handling devices that have data that needs to be sanitized or destroyed, we have Appendix B in there. So Appendix B is going to include logical, which is with the software, or physical, where we are putting it through a smelter, we're putting it through a shredder, we're putting it through several different types of ways to physically destroy it. Test and repair for Appendix C. So if you're testing the devices, this is where it's going to come in with the R2 reuse plan I was talking about earlier. And I am seeing now a lot of companies that are coming in that are true repair houses that may not have been a candidate for R2 under the 2013 version. So that's very exciting to see a lot of the repair houses come in for R2 nowadays. Specialty electronics, that could be all kinds of different opportunities there. It allows you to resell some items that maybe under the old version we weren't able to get there. Materials recovery is Appendix E. And then brokering, which is been a part of R2, I believe in the 2013 version, is going to be Appendix F. So choices for you to make. Usually on my first call with clients, we go through this list so I understand exactly what we're talking about. Each one of these appendix require documentation. They require record keeping. They require some training usually. So getting these appendix set almost as soon as we can is important. And it's going to be important when we start talking to the certifying body, because they're going to want to know what appendix that's going to all be included in, how long your audit is, things like that. It will affect the cost of your audit that you have with the certifying body as well. ISO versus RIOS. So if you think of R2 as being the roof of the building, ISO or RIOS is going to be the walls. We can't have the roof, can't exist without the walls to support it. ISO, probably most people on the call know what ISO is. We've got ISO 9001, we've got ISO 14001, and ISO 45001 that are all out there that we usually need for R2 V3. No annual fee for those. The standards have been around quite a while. RIOS, probably newer to most people. I see a lot of clients going RIOS. RIOS is ISO is the quality, the environmental, the health and safety all wrapped into one standard, one certification. The big key to RIOS that I like is that it does require an annual fee, but when we get you out there to talk to the certifying bodies about getting a quote, RIOS is usually going to cut some time off of that. So that go back to your budget for time. That's going to save a little bit of time in your audits. Go back to budget for cost. It's going to save a little bit of money in the cost. There's a lot of overlap. So to me, it's really a business decision. I'm comfortable. I think most consultants are comfortable going either route. It just depends on what's going to be more advantageous to the company. Certifying body, we talked about this at the budget for cost, but like I said earlier, I always have clients get 2, 3, 4 sometimes proposals from different certifying bodies. You may know somebody who used one over the other, and maybe you want to go with that one. Definitely you want to look at the cost. Definitely we always want to look at what auditors are available. Timeline is always important for clients. Can you meet the timeline I'm after? I will tell you, in the busy world of R2, auditors are typically billed out or already scheduled out 3-4 months in advance. So once we figure out the timeline that you want to get certified by, that's why it's important to get to that certifying body as soon as you can, because we want to get on their calendar, get scheduled so that we can start having, going towards meeting our goal of becoming certified. And then you may want to look and say, hey, are there auditors in my state or even my area that can save me on travel fees? That may be a reason why you want to pick one certifying body over the other. So things for you to think about as you start thinking about the certifying bodies. And this is the last item that I have, which is how are you going to maintain this thing? What would be your plan? You're going to build a nice, robust management system with R2 and the ISOs or the RIOS, whichever way you want to go. You're going to become certified. That's all great, but that to me is the easy part. The hard part is how are we going to maintain this thing? A lot of companies I work with will hire somebody specifically to start to do all the maintenance or all be involved in the R2. Consultant companies will offer a maintenance program to help stay on top of some of those things for you. You don't want to lose everything that you built on for that. And then what's important to remember is you have an annual audit that's going to come along. And then every 3 years, you are going to have a recertification audit. So the maintenance is what I think is the hard part, because now after you become certified, you go back to what you're doing best, right? Buying and selling devices, being out in the business world. But you want to give the attention that's required to keep that R2 and those management systems robust. You want to keep them improving. In fact, we have a requirement to improve to keep things moving forward. Hopefully the business starts to thrive off of some of the things that R2 certification will offer you. But you want to make sure, regardless, that you're at least staying on top of the requirements so that you've keep your new management system moving forward. I did want to go back to one more thing. That was my 10 items. I think all of those are very important decisions for people to look at. And when I get back here to the record keeping, and I want to talk about this a little bit more, is the more that you can become electronic, I think I try to be as paperless as possible, both in my work and in my personal life. But this is really where I think IQ really comes in to help people. There's some advances that the R2V3 has put on for us for what's called the R2 equipment categorization. And I know John and his team has spent a lot of time building that into their into the inventory system that helps us maintain or helps us meet compliance for that. So the record keeping and IQ kind of go hand in hand in that. So that's what I have. The 10 top, or what I see is the 10 things that everybody should be paying attention to. So I think, John, if you're ready, I'm ready to open it up to some questions.
Great, Michael. Thank you for putting that together. That was a lot there. We will be sending this out as in a recording for you to look back on as well. But hopefully that can get the brain turning and thinking, okay, here's my starting points. These are the things I need to be looking at, and then you kind of just go brick by brick, check by check of starting to putting that together. So if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can try and answer them.
John, do we have to put them in the chat? Because I have a couple. Is it okay if I just don't write them out and I just ask them?
For you, Karen, that is absolutely okay.
First of all, thank you. John, thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's desperately needed. And Michael, thank you so much for, at least for me, putting it in a way that I could understand.
You're very welcome.
I think this is super, super helpful. I do have a couple questions, and I know I'm coming from a different place than some others, but hopefully these questions will help others.
Absolutely.
You were talking about there being able, with some things that you cannot do through software, do manually. So my question is around routers. There are some limited softwares out that work for some and not others. Is there a overriding rule about routers and switches?
It's a great question, Karen. I think we would have to look at them case by case, but let me throw this out here. So if the software does overwrite or purge, and these are NIST 888 terms that maybe you've run across before. So I think we would have to look at that software versus what it actually can do. If it has to be a factory reset, following manufacturer guidelines, and then how we would record that. And again, another way that IQ can come in, because the TAC committee of Siri has said the best way to do that, or the way that it needs to be done, is through the ERP system. So it's kind of not a great answer, but I can't answer that without knowing which router and finding out what software will do what.
Well, if my next question led through, because I don't think there is anything out there that does all of them with the different brands, and everything's got its own speciality. my next question was, if it was done manually and input through the ERP system, would that suffice?
Absolutely, but a couple of things to follow there, but and I'd love to talk to you more about that, but the TAC committee did come out with that, and that is part of the NIST 888 guidelines as well of what needs to be there. So basically, we can't just have an Excel spreadsheet that's easy to manipulate. We need to have a solid record to the ERP. So that would following the requirements the TAC put out in December would get you there. Yes.
Perfect. And my next question is around the auditor shortage.
Mhm.
Consultants are wonderful, but I heard it and it wasn't very long ago, that there was a shortage of auditors due to COVID and people retiring and things like that. So where do you see a long lag time from your consulting to that being able to go to a Perry Johnson or whoever it is and actually get an auditor to do what's necessary to get them certified?
Again, another great question. Goes back to where I kind of spent a little bit of time saying, as soon as you know you want to go R2 and you've got a plan together, you want to get with that certifying body. I heard the same thing, that there was a shortage of auditors. I think I know we've seen quicker time frames lately come out, so I think they've solved a little bit of those issues. But as soon as you're ready to go, you should really get with a certifying body, not only to get their quote, but then once you sign with them, I mean, the minute you sign with them and pay whatever deposit, they'll schedule you. And so that's my recommendation on that.
Okay, I have one more question, but I don't want to take the group hostage, so I'll shut up. And if there's enough time at the end, I'll ask another question.
No, Karen, you're fine too. Brian did ask a good question here in the chat though, that if a company is already R2V3 cert, what is the most common issues that companies overlook or tend to forget about? And what pitfalls should we be looking out for when a company is preparing for a year 3 audit?
Recertification audit. Yeah, definitely. The biggest, great question, Brian. The biggest pitfall that I've seen out there, let me start with just lack of attention to detail. All that stuff that you did to become certified, you want to make sure that that is still there. But I will tell you, in industry-wide, what I have seen, and I'm talking about somebody who's doing a logical sanitization process, they're not doing a great job on the 5% recovery attempt, and that's in Appendix B. I know it wasn't audited very tough at the beginning of R2V3, but I only know how to do it the right way. I know how to do it one way, and it's the right way. We follow the requirements, and even though I get the oohs and ahs, and do I really need to do this, Michael? If it's in the standard, we have to do it. That's one way that I've seen pitfalls is with Appendix B. Appendix C, I see we add commodities and we don't necessarily get to that reuse plan and identify that functionality of whatever it may be, adding smartwatches, adding fitness trackers, adding anything like that. We still need to identify the functionality of that. So my best answer for you, Brian, is you're getting ready for your third, getting ready for recertification. Remember, everything's in the pool. It's not like a surveillance. They're looking at everything. That's why that audit's a little bit longer than your surveillance has. Make sure you're taking a look at everything. Are we updated? Is the closure plan where it needs to be? If you've moved and you've got a bigger facility now, maybe you have to have a better financial instrument that's going to cover that you've considered the financial instrument. The focus material plan, especially if we have new commodities or have we identified new downstream. So making sure that that due diligence is done, but making sure we get that information into the focus material plan. So biggest pitfall is you got to take a look at your system and just make sure that you've got it maintained and updated correctly.
Yeah, and being a person in previous roles that I have gone through audits like that, make sure you are doing your homework. Just like Michael said, don't wait till the day your auditor's there to open up that file and start going through everything. This should be in a ongoing approach. So always keep up on it and keep doing your homework with it. Roger looks to have made a good plug. Siri has just released a podcast about the most common NCs found during the implementation of R2B3. Look for Ask the R2 Guru on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and he said, great job to Michael.
Thanks, Roger.
Mike, this is Drew. Can we expand a little bit on that 5% verification? Can you expand a little bit on that? Does it have to be an independent software? Does it have to be an independent person? Can it be from the same organization? Just kind of expand on that a little bit, please.
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So the standard says that routinely 5% of logically sanitized devices will be reviewed by an independent party. So is your company big enough to have an independent party? Do you have a department that's not included in data sanitization? There's plenty of them out there that I know that they're able to do that. But then it also says by an independent and competent person. So making sure that the person has a background or at least, some kind of competency has to be assigned to that person to handle that. And then it does say that it has to be a commercial software has to be used to attempt to recover information. So that is all in the standard. Typically what I see, Drew, is I see companies, it's a system, just like anything else that you're going to do. You're going to set up a system, and how often are we going to do it? Routinely, I don't think is defined in the standard. So you tell me what you think routinely is. If you've got a lot of production of logically sanitized devices, I wouldn't wait and do anything like that quarterly. Your 5% is going to be huge. Maybe it's weekly. I've got some companies that are doing it daily. It just depends on what's going to work for you. But all those are there. Yes, independent, competent, by a commercial software.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So it looks like Brian asked another question. So if we're using a different software for verification, is it still needs to be done by a different individual other than the original tester?
I would highly recommend that. Yes.
Michael, I have a question around that because I've spoken to several auditors and I've spoken to Siri. I was told that my understanding of what I was told was it can be, if you're using one company for erasure software, you can use that same company for a separate verification as long as it is a separate process done by somebody else within the company. So if Susan is erasing it, Steve has to verify it. It can be a separate verification software from the same vendor.
That's a great point. If it's making a recovery attempt, okay?
Correct.
I've seen some people try to get away with saying, well, we wiped it and then we re-wiped it with the same software. Re-wiping it is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to recover. So, and there are some out there. That's a great point. There are some out there that will do that. And if that's the situation, I think it could stand up to an audit. As long as you've got the rest of it there, you've got the independent and competent 5% on a routine basis, and you're using the software, I think you can hit all the high notes on that.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
This has to do with the consultant, because you're doing this, you know, and you're giving us amazing information. I know that there's all kinds of things out there, you know, how to decide on what ERP system, how to use which independent, you know, how do you know which data eraser software? How do you know which consultant to use? I mean, obviously, we're going to say you because you're doing this and you're giving us thought leadership. But if somebody is looking into becoming R2, what are the things they should look for from a consultant?
Yeah, another great question. You know, I would say it's almost like anything else you're going to do, you know, find out, you know, look into the history of that person, ask around. If the consultants got competence at all, the people at Siri will know who they are. You know, I'm not necessarily they're going to give you an opinion, but they'll know who they are. They'll probably lead you to some people that are going to tell you some things about them. Find out who some of their clients are. I mean, I never have a problem with letting somebody talk to somebody I did work for, because that's the great. I mean, I can advertise, I can stick my logo everywhere I want. The best advertising I have is a satisfied customer who we went through this process together, because it's a process and it's challenging at times, and you know, you find somebody who can handle all those different challenges, and it's going to lead you, right? Because at the end of the day, consulting's not doing it all for you. I can lead you, I can give you the information, I can walk with you, but ultimately you're the one that's going to stand up to the audit, that's going to have to live this going forward if you're going to do it, you know, by yourself without a consultant going forward. So that's the kind of person that I would look for, that I think most companies are looking for. But your word of mouth, I'd talk to, you know, you could talk to people probably at the certifying bodies. I think there's several ways that you can do to find the consultant that works for you, and then do an interview process. You know, I mean, you're going to ask them for a proposal, and that's dollar and cents, but, you know, find out, you know, whether they have a personality that you agree with, and you know, I would interview them just like I would anyone else for something I need, that I need somebody to take charge of and get me where I need to be.
You know, I was just going to say too, you would treat it just like a actual interview process. Remember that you need to be able to work with them as well. So sit down and ask them, not just dollar-wise, but ask them questions as well. And never just go with the first one. Always ask around, look around. It never hurts.
Absolutely.
There was another question. Somebody asked, is the VeriDrive software still good for the verification process?
I'm sorry, what is the name of it?
VeriDrive?
VeriDrive. I'm sorry, I don't have information on that. I could look into it for you, but I'm not.
Something I think we'll have to get back to you on too. I don't know much about that. So yeah, we'll have to follow up with you on that one.
Okay. Yep.
Is there any other questions?
Can I ask one final question?
Absolutely, Karen.
And hopefully these are helpful to other people. I know that I'm a huge R2 fan. That's the bandwagon I go on, but many years ago, Jerry Powell was talking about that it was only 30% more to get dual certified. At one point, I know there were companies that some preferred R2 and some preferred the other certification. Is that still the case, or do companies care more that you're certified and not as concerned about which one? I guess that's the question.
I do see, Karen, I do see companies that are dual certified to, you talk about e-stewards, right?
I was going to, well, out of deference for Roger being on here, I was going to say, he that shall not be named.
Oh,
Yes.
that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, I do see some that are dual certified. Very rarely do I see that, and usually it's because of customer requirement. Customer A wants R2, customer B wants the other one. So I don't know about the costs. I can't necessarily speak to that at this moment. If you want to give me a call and we can look at numbers or something, but I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm an R2 person through and through. I see more demand for that. That's really all I can say.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else have a question? If not, I do appreciate everyone's time in joining. I love putting these together just to get information out there and trying to inform. I think this is always helpful. The more information that we can provide, I think the better off we all are. So at this point, I'll let everyone go back to their day and have a good weekend. And thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I really appreciate your time.